Sure, it's easy now. Everybody in Hollywood, everybody in the media, all coming out now and expressing their disgust with Harvey Weinstein, even Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, who waited long enough. As more and more details come out of these alleged despicable acts involving all kinds of women, including famous names, Gwyneth Paltrow and also Angelina Jolie and others. He denies all of these allegations, but the evidence is mounting. And so now the question for me is, not only why didn't some of them speak out before? I'm not talking about the women who actually had these tense, traumatic encounters with a guy who was a very powerful media and movie mogul. One can understand their reluctance, particularly the younger ones, not to want to endanger their career by taking on and getting into a he said, she said with Harvey Weinstein. But the media organizations, not all these journalists are telling us that, well, yeah, we all knew about this. Yeah, everybody kind of knew about this. Why this wasn't reported before, a couple of journalists certainly tried. And that brings us to Ronan Farrow, the former MSNBC host, still a special correspondent for NBC News, and why in the world his story wasn't aired by NBC instead of, which let him walk out the door and take it to the New Yorker, which published it, a very well-documented, well-researched story with a whole bunch of women on the record, including 3 women who say they were raped by Harvey Weinstein. Again, he denies it. Why that wasn't fit to air by NBC. Now, I got a hold of a statement by NBC News President Noah Oppenheim, who talked to his troops yesterday. Among other things, Oppenheim said that they were proud of the initial work that Noah did on the story, and that everybody was trying to get this story, and it would be painful, Noah Oppenheim says, for anyone to think that they were in any way covering up for a powerful person. He goes on to say that that's offensive, deeply offensive, he says. We reached a point as an organization over the summer where we didn't feel like we had the elements we needed to air it. Well, let's take a look at that for a second, because according to other reporting, Ronan Farrow already had some on-the-record interviews lined up, some on-camera interviews done, and he had the audio tape. The audio tape, the police sting involving this 22-year-old Italian model who says she was groped by Harvey Weinstein, and we hear him trying to force her into his hotel room, and she's resisting. It's all on audio tape, and he acknowledges on the audio tape that he had groped her breasts, as she says. That in and of itself could have been a story. So why NBC, if it had nothing to do with the fact that Weinstein was a big liberal, Democratic donor, powerful in the business, and had nothing to do with the fact that there were these business relationships between Weinstein's companies and NBC's Universal Pictures and NBC's Bravo channel, why wouldn't NBC encourage Ronan Farrow, with whom it had a long-time relationship, to keep reporting and get it up to the standards that NBC found necessary to publish? Ronan Farrow himself was very blunt with Rachel Maddow. He said, I had the same explosive material that I walked into the New Yorker with. They recognized that, and this should have been made public sooner. That's taking a shot at his employer, and I think he deserves credit for that. There's also the related question of whether or not some news organizations were intimidated by Harvey Weinstein, a guy who, by many, many accounts, was litigious, was vindictive, would sometimes have negative stories leaked to the press about his critics, the people who crossed him. The Washington Post reporting yesterday that negative information on one of Harvey Weinstein's accusers was, in fact, given to the Post, which was looking into it before the bombshell New York Times story that started all this. So there's just a lot of unanswered questions here for our business, for the Hollywood business, for the people who knew about Weinstein as he goes off to some undisclosed rehabilitation center for sex rehab. This story is not over, and the people who were complicit or silent, I think, have more explaining to do, and we need to understand why it is that these people, until they are no longer in power, seem kind of untouchable, and it's very hard for all but a few journalists. And in that list, I have to include not just Jodi Kantor and her colleague at the New York Times, but Ronan Farrow, to reach them and to bring to the public what they were actually doing.